Who on Who? The podcast devoted to the review of classic series Doctor Who DVDs in no particular order. Greetings, fellow Doctor Who fans, and welcome to I Will Skip the Salad Bar edition of Who on Who, the podcast devoted to the review of classic series Doctor Who DVDs, normally in no particular order, but as you know, we're going through the stories of the trial of a Time Lord, and we are now at adventure number 3 in that set, Terror of the Vervoids. And my special guest co-host today is from the UK, Mr. Tom Attah. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. Tom, before we go any further, I like to usually give the listeners a little insight into who it is I'm talking to and talking with. So let's talk a little bit about you and what you do. I know that you and I are both IT guys, but you've been a Doctor Who fan your whole life?
Yeah, absolutely. I got into Doctor Who back in the 1970s, so when Tom Baker was reigning as the current Doctor. Okay. And my first full season was season 17, which is Baker's penultimate one, but it's got some amazing stories in it, and it's the period of the show's history where it was at its most colourful and its most zany and its strongest and strangest, definitely. So yeah, I was brought into it by Tom Baker, and I've not really left yet.
Okay, now I'm a little off on my season/series numbers. So is 17 the Hinchcliffe era?
No, season 17 has got things like City of Death. And,
oh yes, okay, okay. So that's with Romana 2 and all right, wonderful, gotcha. Yes, exactly, love City of Death. Very very good story there. Loved it very much. Do you have any projects that you do online? Other than, I know you're on Facebook. I know that you are a blues musician, and I know that you're going to be typically reticent to talk about your accomplishments there. But you have some success as a blues musician. So, is there a place where folks over there in the UK can see you perform?
Yeah, absolutely. If you just type my name into Google, in fact, just like Tom Attah, that's Tom space Attah, a lot of you'll be taken to my Facebook page, you'll be taken to my MySpace page. I've been very, very lucky, actually. Over the last couple of years, I've been going out and playing, and the reaction to what I do has been just relentlessly positive. I think because I go out and I wear a suit, and I'm of African descent, so I look the part as well. Plus, I will do a bit of talking about Doctor Who while I'm playing and engage with people. It seems to go very, very well. So if people would like to hear some Delta-style blues from someone that is very passionate about the music, yep, just type my name into the internet, and I should come tumbling out carrying a guitar. All
right. Now, do you ever come over here to the States where the actual Delta is?
Well, my partner and I are hoping to come across to Chicago later on this year. So that wouldn't be the first time I've been to the United States. I went to New York some time ago, but I'm really looking forward to coming this year and actually just sitting in Chicago and absorbing some of the atmosphere that maybe contributed to this music that I love so much.
Right. I've never been to Chicago. My wife's from that area, but she went recently, a couple years ago. She went with some friends on a little girls trip, and she came back and said, "I've got to take you to Chicago. You're going to love it." And I have yet to go, but my travels don't usually extend too far from home, but I am going to Gallifrey in February, and so I'm looking forward to that. Not the planet, just the convention over in California. But
would that be your first convention?
Yes, it's my first Doctor Who convention. So I'm nervous. I'm a little apprehensive, but I'm also very, very excited because I've met a lot of people through this podcast and other podcasts and online, and so I'm looking forward to getting a little FaceTime and getting to interact with them without a microphone or a keyboard in front of me. So
that sounds cool. I went to my first convention this year as well. Oh, sorry, last year I should say. Called a thing called Time War. Over in a city called Sheffield, in Sheffield, which is about half an hour's drive from me, and it was actually there was a moment where I was like, hang on a minute, there's an awful lot of grown men here dressed up as Doctor Who characters, and there's a moment where you sort of catch yourself going like, is this weird? And then it's like, no, it's great fun because everybody tends to be very, very welcoming. And then, to be honest with you, they had a lot of Dalek builders there. I didn't realise there are entire forums for people who build Daleks, but it was incredible, because I think once you sort of drop the idea that you're supposed to be acting like a grown-up, suddenly it's like, there's Daleks here, it's fantastic, there's a TARDIS here, it's fantastic. There were people dressed as different doctors, there were Cybermen wandering about, and the look of joy on the children's faces was only equalled by the look of joy on the middle-aged men's faces. But so I can only imagine that Gallifrey will be a lot larger because I guess from what I understand there'll be some stars of the show there. So yes. I'm sure you'll have a great time. I'm sure it'll be fantastic.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm afraid that I'm going to have a hard time navigating the waters of a large Doctor Who convention, having not been there, and I've been forewarned by Ken Deep from Podshock. He told me, he said, "There's so much to do. Don't even try to plan to do it all. Just do, whatever tickles your fancy. That's what you need to go and do, so that you don't feel like you didn't get anything out of it. But it's a wonderful experience, and I've been told that by many people. So I'm very excited, and it's coming up quick. It's the end of February that it's happening, and already we're well into January. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year to you as well.
It's 2010 or 2010. There's a sort of a debate going on about what are we going to call this year. I don't know. We're going to call it 2010. So I think, but.
2010 works. Whatever works. We're fans of a show about time travel. I'm sure we'll find a way through.
Exactly. As long as we don't call it 2009, we won't look stupid. So you can call it whatever you want, right? So.
Well, actually, I had someone saying calling it 09 last a couple of days ago. And I thought, it's very turn of the century, like back in 09, which is yeah. But that's 2010. I'm actually really looking forward to it. We're Doctor Who fans, so we had a great set of Christmas presents, I think.
Yes, we did, and we were talking a little bit about that off air. But we got a chance to watch The End of Time Part 2 just last night, and so my family and I all liked it. My wife was crying at the end, but I was thrilled with it. I don't know if it's something that emotionally I could go back and watch again anytime soon, but I loved it. I really did, and I thought that it was a wonderful send off to the guy that brought Doctor Who back. I mean, people can say what they want to about Russell. There's a lot of things about him that I was starting to get a little over. I was kind of joining that camp of saying, okay, thank you, but it's time for you to go. But ultimately, I mean, this is the guy that did it. I mean, he brought Doctor Who back in a way that was bigger than it's ever been, and this was a wonderful send off for him. I think it was. So.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the great things about Doctor Who is we mentioned earlier on that it's about change, it's about renewal, and it's about reinvention. And the 2005 reboot for the show couldn't have been better. A fantastic actor, passionate production team, and you've got this show with really high production values that looks stunning. And then we've had 4 years of that now. Again, a great actor in David Tennant. But it's time for the show to reinvent itself, and it's time to move on to something new. And it's interesting that as the lead actor leaves, then you can feel the whole production sort of drawing breath and getting ready to assert itself again. So I'm really looking forward to what Matt Smith does with it. Definitely.
Yeah, yes, me too, absolutely, and also very excited to see what the inside of the TARDIS is going to look like. Since spoiler alert, there's going to be a new inside of the TARDIS, and if you haven't seen The End of Time Part 2, you'll know why at the end of Time Part 2. You can't fix that with a little bit of spackle. That's going to have to be completely redone. So.
Well, it's that thing. If you look very carefully, far be it from me to suggest that Doctor Who fans might be a little bit obsessive about stuff. But if you look at the trailer for season 5, there are a couple of shots, very, very brief. There's a couple of shots of the TARDIS interior there.
Oh, really? I'll have to go back and look. I haven't done that frame by frame, thing that a lot of people do. I mean, people go over, the footage on those trailers, like the Zapruder footage of the Kennedy assassination. I mean, they're going clip by clip, looking at it, going, look, But I don't do that. I'll watch it, a few times, and that's about it. But
well, it's interesting. Again, I've not personally done that myself, but luckily in the Doctor Who community there are people who do that for you. So I just saw this afternoon something, a little bit of the footage of the interior, and it's like, oh, that's nice.
Really? So from what you've seen, does it look like it's completely different? Are we going back to a more classic vibe, something more sci-fi, or?
Well, actually, if we're allowed to discuss it, yeah, perfect. It looks like the waypoint, the midpoint between the classic series and the new series, and as much as the colours seem to be the same, the lovely browns and reds, but the roundels are there, and there's more of a sense of space there. My understanding is that the console's been rebuilt, or the console set has been rebuilt to be so it can be shot in HD or high definition, so it looks better.
Yes.
And looking at it, there seems to be a larger sense of scale, and the roundels are back as well. So but not in that very 80s way of look, it's a big white set. So it does seem to still be a fishbowl. No one that I know anyway has seen the new console yet, but it does seem to be. It's not totally different to the way the console room looks now, but it's different enough to be new, which is pretty much what goes on with the actor, I guess. It's different enough to be new.
Good. Well, I'm excited to see it, and I'm joining that group of people who is hoping that we get to see more of the inside of the TARDIS than just the console room at some point. Now that Stephen Moffat's in charge, but we'll see.
That's going to be good. There's I guess there's the obligatory wardrobe scene. So we'll see what goes on with that.
Yes, well, unless he pulls a John Pertwee and swipes his wardrobe from somebody else's locker, somewhere. But you know what? We'll find out.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to the ride. I mean, Russell T Davies used to say that the TARDIS is just a bus. It's just an excuse to get the Doctor and the companion into the next adventure. But I don't know. I'm an old man. I'm kind of attached to the old thing myself. I'd like to see more of it. I'm with you. I'd like to see more of the inside of it.
Yes. I think that they could do so much with it. So I don't know that we need a whole episode with them trapped in the TARDIS, unless there was a new person in there as well. That they could play off of a little bit. But, I don't know. It would just be nice to sort of see a quick glimpse of somebody's sleeping quarters. There's got to be that in there,
Well, going back to the 80s and seeing like T's room or Romana's room, something along those lines.
Yes, exactly. Something like that. So, but anyway, let's go ahead and move forward here. I've got one email message to read, so let me go to the email bag.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
All right, this message comes from Peter Cavanna. If that name sounds familiar to any of you, Peter is the one that joined me on the first adventure of the Trial of a Time Lord, The Mysterious Planet. He wrote in to comment on the last episode of Mind Warp, said, great. Dear David, great podcast on Mind Warp. Graham was an excellent guest host, and I have to agree. Graham Sheridan, thank you very much again for being here. He says, I've just finished listening to it and thought I would drop you a line. Hope Christmas was good for you. I think End of Time is showing stateside tonight, so hope you love that too. And he sent that to me, I believe, he sent it on December 26th, so he was talking about End of Time Part 1. But thank you, Peter. Yes, it did show stateside the day after over here, which we were all thrilled about. And I've seen them both and did enjoy. Two definitely helped take some of the bile of one and reduce it. But it was very good. And yes, Christmas was good to me. In case anybody's interested, I happen to get the E-Space Trilogy box set. So that's going to be coming up pretty soon on Who. And I also got the War Games. And the War Games is going to be the first DVD reviewed after Trial of the Time Lord. I have a guest host lined up, and it's my son Marty who's coming back. He did Ghostlight with me with the Seventh Doctor adventure, and so he said, "Hey, Dad, I'd like to do War Games with you." And I said, "It's a 10-parter, so get your Red Bull out because it's gonna be a bit of a watch." And he said, "No, that's okay, we can do it." So, but it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. But that is well into the future. So anyway, let's go ahead and get ready for Terror of the Vervoids. I'm going to set the TARDIS controls here for November the 1st, 1986. And we are off to that mysterious space station to check in on the trial of a Time Lord. Hold on, here we go. Here it is Terror of the Vervoids. Like I said, this is the third adventure in the Trial of a Time Lord season. It's a 4-part story written by Pip and Jane Baker and directed by Chris Clough, I believe is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
I get really nervous about mispronouncing people's last names, but I don't think he's going to hunt me down. But you know. Yeah, I can see. I doubt he even listens to the podcast, but my luck, his next door neighbor say, "Hey, Chris, I listened to this guy's podcast, and he screwed up your last name."
Chris Kyle.
Yeah. Chris, what? Where's he live? You know? Chris, yeah, Chris jumps the jetliner and comes over here to East Tennessee looking for me. I want to be able to cover myself. So anyway, the trial picks up immediately after the Doctor has had some time to mourn the shocking death of Perry at the end of Mind Warp. And we see the Doctor coming back into the courtroom and sort of gathering himself. Remember that he has now been, his charge has now been changed to genocide.
No,
I take that back. Pardon me, you're right. That's later, isn't it? That's the end of this one.
Exactly so.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm jumping the gun here. The Doctor is on trial, but the stakes have gone up. Well, what are the stakes again, Tom? I know he's gone.
Okay. So at this point, so he enters the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
Or the trial started just as he was removed from Thoros Alpha, where Mind Warp took place. So the last scenes of Mind Warp are the Doctor being dragged backwards into the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm.
So his memory clears. He enters the courtroom. And then he watches, as you say, the shocking death of his companion. Right. As Terror of the Vervoids starts. Of course he's upset. Of course he's very, very subdued because he didn't know that Perry had died, and then he's just had to watch it in public, whilst being told by the Valeyard it's entirely his fault. And there was nothing he could do because, as he says, he was on his way to save her when he was dragged across time and space to the courtroom.
Right. Right, and that's obviously a very shocking blow to the Doctor, and of course he's still on trial for his very life at this point, as well. And it's now his turn to present his defense to the Valeyard, to the court, and apparently while he was out between episodes, he was also allowed to look at the Matrix and decide what he was going to use as evidence to defend himself. And for whatever reason, he chooses a story that takes place in his own future.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because you could almost take the fact of his existing in the future as an indication that, okay, well, you got off the trial, you're fine, you exist in the future, your continued existence demonstrates that you got through this. But then again, it's a show about time travel, so there's probably something wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey that I'm missing about all of that.
Well, that's an excellent point, because I hadn't thought about that. I did make a note while I was watching that basically it just said adventure takes place in Doctor's future. I put a question mark and an exclamation point. I said he's allowed to see his own future. I would imagine that there are limitations even for Time Lords, and being able to look into your own future and see what you're going to do. And of course, it basically invalidates the seriousness of the trial, because if he has a future, but then again, he's been taken out of time, so this was perhaps a future that won't take place now.
Exactly. Do you know what? That's exactly the point. Because taking a little sidestep, there is the question when you think about multi-Doctor stories. The question that gets asked a lot: how come that the latest Doctor doesn't remember any of this? Because it happened to there's the first, second, third, fourth Doctor. It's happened to them. Why doesn't the fifth Doctor or the sixth Doctor remember any of this stuff?
Right.
But the answer, I think, is in exactly what you've just said. The events haven't happened until they actually happen, and generally speaking, it's going to be outside of what we'd like to call conterminous time. Mm-hmm. So the events of the five Doctors haven't happened to the third Doctor until they actually take place outside the one of time. What happens when they go back to their relative time streams is another matter entirely. But I think maybe the answer to this could be, all right, the Doctor's looking at a possible future rather than a definite one. That still raises a number of questions about how to treat his companion, because without wanting to get too far into the next episode before we talk about this one, there's a bit of weirdness about what happens to his companion, because this Doctor hasn't met her just yet. Where does he take her at the end of it? How does he get around the fact that he hasn't met her, but there she is? But then again, that's probably why he's a Time Lord and I'm just a human.
Right, exactly. But since you brought up companion, let's go ahead and talk about her a little bit. This story introduces Mel, Melanie Bush from Pease Pottage, and let's talk a little bit. Mel is not widely considered to be one of the most popular amongst fans. Doctor Who companions, and I have to admit that I hadn't seen a lot of stories with Mel. I've seen Dragonfire. I've seen most of the early Seventh Doctor stories, but that was a long time ago because a lot of them aren't out on DVD yet, at least not here in America. So I don't have a lot of exposure to her. So going into this story, I was really ready to. It's a very similar feeling to what I felt before I sat down to watch my first Sixth Doctor story. In that I was very cautious because I sort of had a preconceived notion in my head already that I wasn't going to care for this interpretation of the Doctor, and in this case, I wasn't going to care for this companion very much. But I actually liked Mel in this story. I thought that she was spunky. I thought she held her own. I thought that you have to keep in mind that the actress is doing what she's told to do. She doesn't write the story. So I certainly don't hold anything against Bonnie Langford. I thought she was very good in what she did. But yeah, I mean, Mel seems to relish the adventure as much as the Doctor, and while being a little bit cautious. She's not whiny like Perry was. So
exactly so. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think there are two reasons why perhaps fandom convulses a little bit around Bonnie Langford and Mel Bush. The first suggestion I have is that she isn't introduced in any way. We don't get to know her. She's just bang, she's there.
Right.
And it's like, well, hang on a minute, who are you? Where do you come from? It does feel rather like someone's just been sprung into a room with you, which is, kind of, which can jar the spine a little bit. The other thing, of course, is that sometimes it can be hard to separate the actress from the character. And Bonnie Langford in the UK had a very long history of being a theatre actress, but she was particularly known for playing a character called Violet Elizabeth Bock, who was, quite frankly, just a precocious, shouty little ginger kid. And again, she was just doing what she was told to do. She was being an actress and putting across this really quite a vile character. But people sometimes, because she played it so well and she was so distinctive, people have a problem forgetting that she was just acting out the part. So as much as, intellectually you're looking at the show and you're seeing Mel Bush, there's a part of the psyche, I think, in the UK where they're seeing Violet Elizabeth Bock, this horrible character from 30 years or from 20 years before, suddenly in the TARDIS. Mm. But I agree with you. I was going to ask what you thought of Mel, because on paper, she is the perfect companion. She's young, she's pretty, she's energetic, and she's up for it. When the Mayday comes in, she's all over the console. Let's go. She's the first out of the TARDIS. Let's go and have a look. And she's almost leading the Doctor by the nose through the adventure for the first couple of episodes. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, literally, if it had been cast slightly differently, or if Bonnie had been able to just put the association with that other character aside, or more accurately, if the viewing public had been able to put that association aside, that she would have been more successful. It's interesting to see that if you listen to the Big Finish audios, there are a couple where Bonnie Langford and Colin Baker are together as Mel and the Sixth Doctor again, and she's really, really good. She chews through the dialogue, and to be honest, it's interesting in the commentary because Colin is very defensive of her. He says, look, she's very professional. She did exactly what she was told to do. Yes. Even to the point where at the end of the episode 1, I think it's quite well known that the director asked if she could scream an F, or the key of F, because that was the same pitch that the sting for the end of the show came in on. So you can see it. She's genuinely having a good time, and the relationship between her and the Sixth Doctor. I mean, you mentioned Perry, where the relationship between them for most of the previous seasons is actually quite antagonistic. These two seem to get on, and it's a pleasure that they do, because then you can relax and not think, why is the Doctor not getting on with his companion? Oh, and so, the sense not that anymore. It's on the adventure. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's okay. You started breaking up there just a little bit toward the end. So, but I believe that I know what you're talking about. That's yes, that's very much the case with the Perry character. There was a lot of question about why do they continue to travel together if they're going to be sniping back and forth to each other, is for lack of a better word. But yeah, I did like Mel. Now, of course, I'm a little partial anyway to redheads. Mrs. Huey's a redhead, so of course I'm going to be a little partial to the redheads. But yes, I did, and it's funny that you mentioned Bonnie Langford's career, because it's very reminiscent of the outcry when Billie Piper was hired, to play Rose. And matter of fact, Colin Baker mentions that in one of the extras. I don't remember if it's on this disc or the next disc. I pull the curtain back a little bit for the listeners. I've actually already watched the last one, and normally I don't. Normally I want to keep all my information specific to what I just watched, but I had to see the end of the trial, so I went ahead and watched it and watched all the extras, and so there may be a little bit of information from that disc bleeding over into this one, but I know at one point he makes mention that he thought Billie Piper did a fantastic job, but there was a very similar outcry there when she was hired, because the pop star, give her a break. I mean, let's see what she does. I mean, I thought Mel was good here, so.
Definitely. Again, quick side step. It's Doctor Who fans. You might remember. Have you seen any of the Zoe adventures? Any of the second Doctor adventures that feature Wendy Padbury as Zoe? Wendy Padbury got her part because she'd been part of a talent show. Clearly she had something, she could do a bit of acting, but she came second in a talent show where the prize was to go off and do some, it was to have something tough, like you get a record deal or whatever. But she came second, and then went along to audition for Doctor Who, and she got that particular role. So the idea of people coming up from a theatre background or through or from singing or from something which is not straight acting is actually very, very old in Doctor Who. So it always I'm always surprised when people say, well, look, here's a producer, here's a script editor, here are writers who have cast this person. They know what they're doing. One of the bizarre things that was circulating at the time, apparently, was that there was going to be a song and dance number just to accommodate Bonnie Langford's theatrical past, which is just crazy. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, you can see that she relishes the part. You can see that she's into it, and she's clearly having a great time playing it. As is Colin Baker, I think, as well.
Yes, and you can definitely see that. Very similar to Catherine Tate when she was brought on to be the companion. Everybody said, "Oh, the comedian," but she was phenomenal as a in the current series as a companion. So let's leave the casting to the professionals and let's just sit back and enjoy the ride. But moving on from her, this story is a classic whodunit, very reminiscent, ironically enough, of Murder on the Orient Express, which one of the characters on this adventure is reading. Which I thought was wonderful. That Lasky's reading it, and I had to keep watching to see because I couldn't quite catch the title of the book, and I thought, wow, she's reading Murder on the Orient Express. But this takes place on a ship that is very similar to, I guess, is it supposed to be a cruise ship? Is that right?
Absolutely. It's set on a ship called the Hyperion 3. There is that feeling, of course, that nothing ages faster than a vision of the future. So although it's meant to be a Hyperion-class space liner, it does look very, very 80s. But maybe the thing is that it's maybe it's a nostalgia trip. All the people go on, they can pretend that they're back in the 1980s, like 1,000 years ago. Yeah, maybe. I kept waiting for Isaac, the bartender from Love Boat, to pop up at some point because it was very, very kind of very much a product of the 80s. But hey, so was the hair and so was the costume. I mean, you just kind of have to go with it. But But the doctor, but I thought this was very interesting. The commander of the ship, Commodore Travers, has a history with the Doctor, and as somebody who has not seen all of the classic Doctor Who episodes, I've seen a fair number of them. I had to go to Wikipedia, went back and went everywhere looking to find out where this guy, where they met before, and they haven't. It was just something that Pip and Jane threw in there, and I thought, well, for somebody like me, that drives me absolutely crazy because I want to know where they met, why, and all that sort. But once I got past that, a little deep breathing and all that, and once I got through that fact that they hadn't actually met on screen, I was okay with that. But I did want to ask you a question. You had mentioned Big Finish a couple times. I've listened to a few Big Finish. I'm not a subscriber. But has Big Finish by chance maybe addressed the adventure of how the Doctor met Mel? Not Big Finish. There is I believe they're called a PDA, a new adventure book called Business as Usual, which explains how the Doctor met Mel. I've not read it myself, but if you look at the info text for on the episode, which is one of the extras, I suppose, what you'll see is that there's the character treatment for Mel,
right?
It does suggest in there that the Doctor and Mel met when the Master tried to pull off some bizarre banking scam by using all the computers in the world. Now, Mel's background is that she is, as you mentioned earlier on, a computer programmer. So the adventure that the character treatment mentions, we never saw on screen. And as I said, I've not read Business as Usual, but the treatment suggests that it was something that the Master was doing. Mel got involved with the Doctor. Bang, off they went.
Which is interesting because she doesn't recognize the Master in the next adventure, but that's something that I'll be talking about next time on Who. But anyway, all right. Well, like I said, the adventure takes place in the Doctor's future, and the Doctor is pretty much tasked with solving a murder mystery. Actually, multiple murders. It's one of those situations where people are dropping like flies, and they're trying to figure out who the killer is. And the Commodore, although he doesn't necessarily relish the fact that the Doctor's on board his ship, knows that if he gives the Doctor enough leeway, he'll end up solving the mystery, as it were. So the Doctor and Mel do their thing, but he also realizes that he's being manipulated to do it. He refers to himself constantly as a Judas goat, which I thought was very interesting because in this story, of course, as in the rest of them, they go back and forth between the actual story that we're watching and the trial scenes. And it's during this story and the trial that the Doctor also realizes that somebody's manipulating the Matrix, because he has just watched this story off camera, and then when he comes in to present it to the court, there are subtle changes. And, while no one wants to admit or believe that the Matrix has been changed, the Doctor knows that it must be changed because it's not what he saw. So,
do you know what? You're leading into a really lovely thing here, because my opinion of this story is that it's possibly the most complete in this whole season. The Doctor appears to be awake. After 2 stories of waiting for him to kick in and be the hero that we know and love, suddenly it's like, do you know what? I'm awake. Someone's messing with me. There are a couple of things here. There is the theme of manipulation in general. The Doctor's being manipulated by the Valiard. The Valiard's manipulating the Matrix. The Megarians are being manipulated by the humans. Right, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. But it's the first time, for me anyway, all season, that the character of the Doctor is allowed to be complete. He is intuitive. He can see he's beginning to just wake up a little bit and see what's being done to him. So it's one of those things where it's almost like a cheer. I almost like a cheer, because there's Colin being the Doctor. Finally, there he is in glorious Technicolor, being lead actor and being a great hero.
Yes, I agree with you completely. And matter of fact, I made a note here when I was sort of going through and summing up my rating of this story, that I like the 6th Doctor now. I really do. He's been warming up to me over time, but as of this story, I like this guy. I really do, and I see the good. He's definitely not the. I could probably go back now and watch the Twin Dilemma if it was available, and not hate him as much as I did the first time I saw it when he was choking Perry, and I thought, who is this lunatic? I like this guy, and now I see the bigger picture of the way the character was progressing, and all. But very much.
And that's the real tragedy of it as well. Colin Baker apparently had an 8-year plan in his head to try and to go from this brash, as you say, lunatic towards what we see here. And the real tragedy of this, for me, is that this is the last thing that he actually recorded as the Doctor, because they recorded episodes 13 and 14, so The Ultimate Foe. And these were his last scenes as the Doctor, and he's on his game. He's definitely on it. And as you say, he's likable. He's charming. He's intelligent. He's intuitive. He's the central part of it. Unlike something like Revelation of the Daleks in the previous season, where he's just sort of there.
Yeah.
The events just taking place without him. He's central, and the actor and the character seem to be loving it.
Yeah, and like when you were talking about charming there's a scene where the Doctor is trying to charm some information out of the stewardess, and he produces some flowers from his sleeve like a magician, and he's giving her that boyish grin and the whole thing, and he's really selling it, and anyone would be charmed by that. And so I agree with you. I think that he comes off as much more charming. He and Perry, I almost said Perry there. He and Mel, they meet Professor Lasky, who is played by Honor Blackman. I know Honor Blackman's had a wonderful career. Over here in the States, she's always going to be Pussy Galore from Goldfinger. I saw her because oh my God, I know who that is. I saw her right away. But Professor Lasky is leading up a group of people who are they have a the term is escaping me.
Okay, so she's a pharmacologist.
Right.
She's particularly adept at domesticating animals and plants for groups of people. So she's heading up a small team made up of Doland, a character called Doland, and a character called Bruckner. and they're bringing some very mysterious pods along with them to Earth.
Yes.
It's interesting. We can talk a little bit about the casting. Is at its best when it's doing this great ensemble thing. So you've got Honor Blackman, well-known actress. In fact, you have a show over there called. You have a show in the States called Who's the Boss? Don't you?
I'm sorry. What's that?
There's a show called Who's the Boss in America. I think it has Scott Baio in it.
No, actually Tony Danza, but a lot of people, I would imagine, could mistake Scott Baio for Tony Danza. Who's the Boss? Unless you're thinking of Charles in Charge.
All I get to is that there was a show in the UK called The Upper Hand, which was just the same idea, same script, but just done with English actors. And I played that for more years than I care to remember. Actually, I think it ran for like 5 or 6 years.
Oh, okay.
But you've also got playing Doland, called Malcolm Tierney, who again is very well known to British audiences from a soap called Brookside. He had a tremendously long career as well. He's also a guy called Mr. Bennett in the thing called Take Heart. That's how old I am. But you've got these tremendously experienced actors just loving it, playing it very, very straight. There are some moments of great comedy in there. But yeah, you've got Doland and Bruckner. And they're meant to be an agronomist and thaumatologist, and they have these mysterious pods upon which no light should be allowed to fall.
Yes, and it's interesting because not having ever seen this episode, I mean, clearly these are the Vervoids, but we don't get they're not in your face from the very beginning. The Vervoids are kind of kept, hiding in the ship. You don't see anything. Very much like a classic whodunit, murder mystery kind of thing. You don't see the Vervoids. You see a part of one, or you see part of another. You see something looking through a vent. That sort of thing. And I thought that was very well directed and very well planned out to kind of keep a little bit of the mystery, and it just makes it seem more serious than if you have these rubber-suited plants, out there, running around. And also, I think a very interesting message about the their motivation for why they were killing.
I made a note of that, actually. Yeah, you're right. The great thing about the Vervoids is that they're not unlike the Cybermen, actually. The Vervoids just want to survive. They're not. It's not about global domination. It's not that they're killing for the sake of it. But their motivation is actually pretty good. I think, as one of the characters says, at some point, animal kind, which is what we get to school, how they describe everyone on the ship around them, consumes plants. So naturally, all they're trying to do is just remove the biggest threats to them, which I think is actually quite sad, really.
Well, yeah, but okay, now here's a point that I had when I was watching that. I thought that was a fair point, but okay, we and plants have to coexist because they produce the oxygen for us to breathe, and we produce the carbon dioxide for them to take in. So it was, everyone's beliefs aside, it was designed that way. In my mind, it was designed that way on purpose. And so people can take that any way they want to take it. But if these plant creatures kill off all the people that produce the carbon dioxide that they need to survive, they're not going to survive either. So I think there was a slight flaw in that logic when they were writing that.
Do you know what? If we go down that road, the other thing would be, if these things have been genetically designed, why would you design them with a sting?
Well, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought of that. If they've been genetically designed to be a slave force, which is part of the tragedy of their situation as well. They've only been brought into the world or been brought to life so they can go and do jobs that humans don't want to do. There might be, but if you're going to make them, why would you make them lethal? But again, it's Doctor Who. We close our eyes to things like that. That's a wonderful observation, though, Tom, because I can see these guys genetically building one of these. Hey, how's the Vervoid coming? He says, well, he's good, but he's missing something. And they say, how about giving him a stinger? Okay,
Fantastic. Exactly that. So,
that's when they've been working too late in the lab. That's when someone's like, this, I don't know. I would have come up with something else too. Why give them a weapon? That's a good point.
I think we can just turn up the lethal a little bit there. Yeah. You're right.
You can make them itch a little bit, with a stinger, but don't make it lethal. I mean, that's just dangerous. But anyway, but of course, not meaning to shortchange the story, but the Doctor, of course, does solve the mystery, and in true who-on-who fashion, I'm not going to tell you who the murderer was. You're going to have to watch it, but I will tell you this. It was not the Vervoids, number one. I mean, yes, the Vervoids did kill their fair share of people. And by fair share, when they show that scene of the bodies piled up in the vents, okay,
oh, yes.
It looked like a Cecil B. DeMille film to me. I mean, there were bodies, like, everywhere. And I'm thinking, is this not... And this is stepping out of Doctor Who into what was going on at the BBC at the time.
Yeah.
Is this not during the time when Doctor Who was kind of getting in trouble for being too violent?
Yes, it is. It is actually.
And yet they literally show a stack of dead bodies.
Well, this is the thing. You mentioned, you know what? You and your guest host mentioned this last week. In terms of, you noticed there was some sort of tension between the rest of the cast and Eric Saywood. And you're right, the production team have been told, look, can you lighten it up a little bit, make it less violent? We want to see some more comedy. We want it to be lighter, please. Mm-hmm. And so is it all right to talk about this sort of stuff? Can we do that? Or?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Fabulous. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, my understanding is that Eric Saywood was saying, well, all right, we can do all of that. But then you had the producer at the time who was saying, well, no, can you make it funnier? I want a different writer. And so, yeah, you're right. They've been told, make it light, and suddenly there's a pile of bodies there. But this was part of what eventually drove Eric Saywood away from the show. His belief, or so, his reported belief was that John Nathan Turner, the producer, was hiring inexperienced writers, which made his job as a script editor very, very hard indeed.
Right.
And it was actually during this particular production, although the last of the recording block as well, that Saywood just said, you know what, I've had enough, I'm leaving. And then he went out and did an interview with a magazine called Starburst. I don't know if you've heard of that, where he just slated the entire production team. He laid into John Nathan Turner, he laid into Colin Baker, and these people were all shocked, like, they were very surprised that he would turn around and say this stuff in a public environment, as opposed to them quietly. But who knows what goes on in the minds of the Doctor Who production team at that time,
Right. Yeah.
But you're right. There were a lot of tension. There were reportedly a lot of tensions behind the scenes, and then of course it all came to a head with what we know happened to Colin Baker later.
I wonder if there's a copy of that magazine interview out there on the internet. So there's got to be out there somewhere. If anybody knows where I can find it, because I would love to read it, somebody email me the link, because I would love to read that, just to kind of help flesh out everything that was going on, in the background at the time. But go ahead. I'm sorry. No,
it definitely exists. It's on the Live Journal forums. Maybe what I'll do is I'll send it across to you now.
Oh, great. Okay, wow. Okay, everyone else, never mind. Tom has me covered. Okay, great. Yeah, because I would love to read it. I think it would be very enlightening to see the whole story. But anyway, the story in itself is very good. It's certain holes there, but I have to agree with you, and I have to agree with a lot of other people who have written in throughout the course of getting ready to do this. Most of the volunteers who wanted to come on and do the co-hosting were picking this particular episode, and I understand why now, because I think this is the strongest one of all of them, and so I have to give out of my rating here for Cloister Bells, I have to give this one. I said Cloister Bells. Okay, all right. I mean, see, it's still early. I've only had one cup of coffee. 4 out of 5 for this one, which is the highest I've given any of these so far. But just because it's enjoyable, it's great. classic Doctor Who whodunit kind of thing, and I really, really enjoyed it a lot. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Tom, how about you?
I'll give it 4 as well. Strong characters, good story, great production values. Lead actors clearly having a great time. Yeah, definitely 4 out of 5. So.
Okay. And the only thing I think it was lacking, like we talked about before, was no proper introduction for Mel. She was just kind of tossed in there, and but I think that she did great as a companion in the scope of the story. It just would have been nice to have the backstory so that we could kind of get introduced to her and all that as well. But you know, all that aside, it's still a very good story, and one that I think could almost stand on its own if you cut the trials. I said this about Mysterious Planet too, but I think if you cut all the trial stuff out, you could have played it as a separate adventure, and it would have been fun.
Definitely. It's not unlike Nightmare of Eden in that respect. You know, you've got this great whodunit on a space liner going on. But you're right, it's definitely the strongest story of that season. Definitely. Okay.
All right. Well, that being said, let's go ahead and move on into DVD extras.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Okay, this DVD actually has the same run of extras as are on the previous discs. I'm going to run down the menu, and again, there are no Easter eggs on this entire set. Very disappointing. I really would have liked to have to had at least one buried somewhere on some disc, but they didn't do that. The first extra here is the Making of Terror of the Vervoids, and again, it's interviewing with a lot of the same people, cast and crew, and some writers. Let's see, there's Colin Baker, Eric Sayward, Pip and Jane Baker, who get to talk a lot. It seems like Pip and Jane get to talk more about what they've done than any of the other writers, or maybe it just seems that way. And it seems to be Jane that does most of the talking. Pip just kind of sits there. So I'm wondering if Jane wasn't a ventriloquist at some point. Maybe she just kind of... She had her hand in his back, and then all of a sudden he'd just pipe up and say something, and then, that was that. But
the power behind the throne.
Yeah, clearly. Exactly. Yeah, that kind of thing. But see, I only say that because Mrs. Hui is not in the house right now. I don't want her to come after me. Jim Sangster, who is the, I believe he's the TV and film historian that they talk with. Clayton Hickman, who's a writer. Malcolm.
He's read it, Doctor Who magazine.
Oh, he is. Oh, that's right. That's right. Because he talks a little bit about. I think on the next disc, he does talk a little bit about something that appears in Doctor Who magazine. Thank you for that. Malcolm Tierney, who played Doland, is also interviewed. Which it's nice to see these people. At least what they looked like in 2008. How well they've aged, and some of them have aged better than others. But it's still nice to see that they're willing to come back and talk about something that, let's be honest, for some of them is probably just a blip on their career. I mean, it's nothing, I mean, it's a put it in the context of you as a musician. Okay, it's one tune-up on stage and not even really it's maybe a one song set for them, and then they're done. But yet they're willing to come back 20 years later. And sit down and discuss it. And I think that's really nice.
Well, Doctor Who has a very, as far as I can work out for actors, Doctor Who is something that an actor wants to do. In fact, I think Michael Craig, who played Commodore Travers, at one point in commentary says, I've been working, but I've never done a Doctor Who, and I thought, well, what have they got against me? So I think a lot of actors do actually take it as being a bit of a badge of honour, because even in the 80s, it still had a certain amount of street cred. How else would you get someone like Honor Blackman in there?
Yes.
To actually come to play a part like that, because he was a huge star. But it's still very much a badge of honour, and I think that continues, even into the new series when you've got people like Chris Eccleston wanting to play the lead role.
Right, yeah, and that's wonderful for us fans because we get better quality actors. We for New Year's, we're a heavy partying family here, and so for for New Year's, we broke out the original 3 Star Wars on DVD and had a movie marathon here at Camp Hui, and we had a lot of fun with it. But I'm silently sitting there watching the background, going, "I think he's been on Doctor Who. I think he's been on Doctor Who." Because I'd had that discussion on the forums over at the website a little bit with some folks, and a lot of people, because of where Star Wars was filmed and everything, there's a lot of people who had bit parts on Doctor Who, and vice versa, ended up with bit parts in the original Star Wars trilogy, and so that was a lot of fun for me. But
definitely, the big one's got to be Michael Sheard.
Yes, yeah, and I got to see him. I go, that's Michael Sheard. Yeah, my wife looks at me like I got 2 heads when I do that, but that's okay. She loves me anyway. All right, the next thing are the deleted and extended scenes. There is a very interesting court discussion with the Doctor versus the Valeyard, and the question comes up about where's the TARDIS, and I thought that really added something to it. I know that these scenes are cut for time, and it didn't change the outcome of the story too much. But and to be honest, I put that in parentheses. I put "Where's the TARDIS?" with a question mark.
It's in the corridor.
yeah, it is there. But I believe the Doctor asks the Valeyard about it, or something to the effect of I forget. There was a discussion regarding, I think, him bugging the TARDIS or something like that.
Okay, I need to review that, because that's not coming to the forefront of my mind. But okay,
I'll have to go back and check that. That'll bother me now. I'll have to go back and check that. But then we go on to the trails and continuity, and then a very nice featurette. That if you're one of those people that doesn't want to go down and hit every featurette on these DVDs, and I can't say that I blame you if you don't want to, but you need to watch this one. It's called The Lost Season, and it talks about the original intent for season 23. It's narrated by Colin Baker. The high point for me, a gentleman named Rob Hammond, who's an artist, did some artwork showing the Doctor and Perry in these stories that were never realized on film. Wow, this is really, really good. Just to sit back and think about what would have been. And now I understand that Big Finish is actually going to go ahead and do this season. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. The Nightmare Fair, I believe, is if it's not available, it's going to be available very shortly. I don't work for Big Finish. Why am I promoting their stuff? But there's that. I mentioned to Magnus that I believe something out as well.
Yeah.
Right. It's really interesting because it's very much a sense of what might have been going on there as well. So it would have been interesting to see how Perry's character develops through the season that never was. But we've now got the wonderful people that finished making those up for us.
Right, exactly. So we've got that to look forward to as well. And now, you can have that season and then go into the trial season if you want to, and that makes the long hiatus between the end of the series and the 2005 series 1 year shorter. So there we go.
Yeah, definitely.
We have a wonderful audio commentary again. Colin Baker he knocks it out of the park. I mean, I really enjoy Peter Davison's commentaries, but Colin Baker is just fun to sit and listen to. He is a great raconteur, and you can sit and talk about the people, talk about what was going on. You can detect, or at least I feel like I can detect, that there are still... He doesn't actively try to hide any hurt that he may still feel. Although it's been 20 years, there's still a little bit of pain in certain things, and so he lets that out with his humor and a little barb here or there, and I think that's just his personality. But I think he has a right to that, and I don't think it actually takes away from the commentary. If anything, it definitely adds to watching, and it's well worth going back and rewatching these episodes with the commentary on.
Yeah, definitely.
So I enjoyed it. Now the info text, I watched it with the info text, and the same is going to be true for the next one, probably even more so for the next one. But the info text almost becomes a little too distracting on this disc for me, and I've never had that trouble before. But I think some of it because there's so much text that it's blocking like almost half the screen, and I'm like, okay, I don't need a whole dissertation up there. Just throw something up, and I almost wish that the people putting the info text up would listen to the commentary first and say, you know what, he already said that. Let's not go, because a lot of times they're putting the same thing up on the screen that has already been said or will be said in a moment or is being said, and I don't know. That's my personal feeling on it. Normally I'm a fan, but this time I really wasn't. So,
in fact, I see where you're coming from. This particular story does require you to concentrate quite hard. So if you're trying to watch it and read the info text, it can be a bit confusing. One general point, though, I think you made this last week as well, though, was that as Doctor Who fans, we're massively spoiled. I don't mean we get episodes spoiled, but we get this show which is like 20 years old, and people have lovingly updated it. They've put all these extra. I don't know of another TV show that gets that.
Right.
I don't know what the Star Trek people get, but we get a Doctor Who DVD. It's like, well, right, here's the story, here's the commentary, here's the info text, here's the extras, here's the photo gallery. It's fantastic. You really do get we get spoiled. I suppose what it is you've got fans making products for other fans. So perhaps that's why we get so much stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And as far as Star Trek, I mean, I'm not a huge Trekker or Trekkie or whatever they prefer there. But I do have the first season of the original Star Trek series on Blu-ray. And they've done a beautiful job going back and repainting the scenes of the Enterprise in orbit around the planets. They've updated a lot of the special effects, and they've done that. But you still don't get the info text, you don't get the commentary, you don't get the things that we get, that I think we start, like you're alluding to, we start to take advantage of that. We start to kind of gloss over the fact that somebody has really taken a lot of time to put this together in a very loving way. I mean, they would have to be a fan to do this. And we are very, very much blessed that somebody has done this. And the best way that we can repay them for that is to go out and buy these DVDs. And, now granted, that's not necessarily a viable option for everyone. But if it's available to rent somewhere, rent it. If it's on Netflix and you're a Netflix member, download it from Netflix, watch it streaming, whatever, because somehow To Entertain knows how many people are buying and watching their product, and therefore they will continue to make it. There are still a lot of Doctor Who stories that haven't been released yet, and the only way that we can give them the incentive to do that is to continue to do what we're doing by buying and watching them. So
agreed, definitely. So. We've got. I wonder. There's one of my favourite extras on this.
Yes. Is
the Now Get Out of That.
Yes, that's the next extra. What was your thought on that?
It was fantastic. You've got Rob Shearman, Nev Fountain, and Joseph Lister, I think, all of whom are writers talking about the cliffhanger the history of the cliffhanger in Doctor Who.
Yes.
Which quite apart from the lead actor and the TARDIS, that's the other thing that's been with the show since day one. Just the idea of how's he going to get out of that? And as you say, it's lovely to look over 40 plus years of cliffhangers with people who are genuinely passionate about it. If the only extra on this was that particular thing, that'd be worth the price of admission alone. It's great.
Yes, and they also include the Christopher Eccleston first series in 2005. To me, I mean, one of my favorite, probably I'm going to say my favorite moment of Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, when you see him on that screen and he says, "Rose, I'm coming to get you," and he turns the thing off, and the Daleks just freak because they know, okay, he's coming.
Exactly.
We're not ready, and I just thought. I love that they included that. I love that they praised it as highly as they did. But yeah, I mean, and they were completely honest about some of the cheesier cliffhangers, for lack of a better term, and cliffhangers don't actually work in the new series as well because it's not serialized, but we still get them. Here in, I don't know, I don't think that they break over there, but when they just showed End of Time Part 2 on BBC America, they still break for commercial. It is harsh, but I've actually gone back and watched the transmission from the UK. Won't go into any details on how that happened, but I will say this: I don't think anything was edited out, and if it was, it was minuscule because the commercial breaks are very, very short. But here's what's nice: they break them right at essentially a cliffhanger point. All of a sudden, something boom, and then they play the first 2 bars of the theme song, and you're out to commercial, and it's like, so I kind of liked it, but we'll see. We'll see if they continue to do that with the new series. I assume that they will, but
well, the show always lends itself to that. I remember the moment that really sort of got me as a child. I don't know if you've watched it yet. Maybe you haven't watched it yet. There's a story called The Pirate Planet.
Yes.
And great story. And the cliffhanger for I think episode 3 is the Doctor being forced to walk a plank. And for the life of me as a child, I was looking at it going, how's he going to get out of that? The following week, it's all nicely and easily resolved. But I remember being, I think 7 or 8 years old, thinking, that's it, he's done, he's finished. He fell off the plank. Normally you could say, well, he'll come back out of that. But the extra itself is very, very good in talking about the technical aspect of some writings as well. So you've got these writers talking about how Robert Holmes would get 3 episodes worth of cliffhangers out of one monster,
right?
In a lovely technical way. But yeah, you're right. It's good to hear artists being technical and very, very proud and very very appreciative of other writers' work. It could be argued in some respects that the history of Doctor Who is the history of television because it's very much state of the art at any given point, which is probably why it doesn't age so well, because if you look back at it, you can see it's the first time green screen was used, and it was the first time this was done, it's the first time that was done. So it's nice to have little moments of the show as well. So you can see how it's evolved over the years as well. I particularly like seeing the first Dalek cliffhanger as well, where Barbara's being menaced by a plunger.
Oh yeah. That was it was a nice bit of history to see all of that, and I think it was nice that they do that. They go back and they pay a nice homage to where the cliffhanger started. And it was just, they also talked a little bit about now as adults when we watch this, we know that the Doctor is going to get out of the cliffhanger. That may not be so true for children who are watching. But the other nice thing about Doctor Who is, like we talked about off air, it's all about change. Yeah. And I almost think that if they could pull it off, and in this day and age, the age of the internet, they never could. But if they could pull off the Doctor regenerating without anyone knowing about it,
wow!
Wouldn't that be something? If we did not know that David Tennant was going to regenerate, and then all of a sudden, boom, here's this new guy. What a shock that would have been! And unfortunately, I think that's the way it was supposed to be with Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, and then the cat got out of the bag early. I think the BBC reported it. And they weren't supposed to, and that kind of ruined it. But, it's not out of the realm of possibility, at least back in the classic day. They could have done it. But,
it's interesting, actually. There's two things from that. The first is, I know what you mean about the Chris Eccleston thing. That was really quite distressing. But I did some work for BBC about a year ago, and they have an in-house magazine called Ariel. And one of the articles in the one I picked up was about how well the secret of Matt Smith's casting was kept, because I think there were maybe there were a very small number of people who actually knew it was going to be him. I mean, right up until the last day, it's like, who is going to be the new Doctor? There was word about Patterson Joseph, there was word about Chiwetel Ejiofor, these two fabulous black actors. And then literally, boom, right there, it's going to be Matt Smith, and nobody knew. It was fantastic. But the article talked about how well the secret was kept.
Yes.
The only other time I think that's really happened, that I'm aware of anyway in Doctor Who, was the reveal at the end of Shock Episode 1. When the Cybermen showed up, and it was going back some years, but I remember as a child just thinking, oh, amazing, it's Cybermen, because we hadn't seen them for such a long time. But again, apparently the production team had worked very, very hard to keep that a secret. There'd been a certain amount of closed set business going on. But you're right. I mean, these days, you've got the internet. If you go to any number of Doctor Who forums, you can see pictures of filming. You can you can pick up bits of dialogue. If you go to video streaming sites, you can see some. I won't say rushes, but you can just watch footage of scenes being filmed.
Right.
Which does make me think sometimes. Well, what do you want? Do you want to see do you want to see the puppeteer, or do you want to watch the show?
Well, that's true. And, there's a reason they call them spoilers, because it can spoil a little bit of the experience for you when you already know, what's coming. But I can't speak for other Doctor Who fans. One thing that I've always been very short on is patience. And so if I have to wait for too long, then I'm gonna start reading the spoilers, because I'm just dying, to know something and, anything. And so I guess I can defend spoilers, but I can also understand the people that avoid them as well.
Well, this is a general point that I'm having conversations about. It could be argued that for a certain generation, or up to a certain point, we regard information as a privilege. But one of the things I see in my work is that there's an increasing number of people from newer, younger generations who see information as a right.
Yes.
So perhaps it's just that particular mindset where, well, if I get to hear something, well, that's just kind of that's great. I'm pleased with that. But there are some, so there's an increasing idea that access to information is a right, because I've got Google, I've got YouTube, I've got all these wonderful things. I can go and find out what I want to know. It's my right to know it. And actually, after a point, it isn't. As I said, I'd rather watch the show than see the Puppet Master. Although that said, I went looking for pictures of the TARDIS, because I love the new TARDIS.
Yeah, it's like watching a magician. I don't want to figure out how he did it. I just want to enjoy, the illusion.
That show with the Master Magician, it just kind of killed it for me. I don't know if you get it in the US. In fact, you must think it's an American show. But these Master Magicians go out and just explain how it all works, and it's like,
yes.
I don't want to see that.
I don't want to do that either. Well, let's go ahead and finish up real quick here with the comment, or not the commentaries, the extras here. I just got a text from my wife, and the text says, "Fair warning, we're on our way home," and that means I was telling Tom off air that the noise level in my house is going to go way up, and it's going to be very hard to record here. So the next extra is the Saturday Picture Show. It's really just an introduction. The viewers sort of get an introduction to Bonnie Langford. Not that apparently they didn't need that, but it's really just to talk about her coming on to the Doctor Who and who she's going to be playing, or who she is playing. It was nice. It was just a nice, quick little sit down. Very, very much 80s. I mean, my goodness, the size of the glasses on that guy's face. I thought, wow, what is that, like a deep sea mask, buddy? What is that? But
Mark Curry.
The styles are so much different back in the day. I remember living through the 80s. It was not a pretty time when you go back and look at it now, but just a bit garish.
You see the coat that she's wearing as well, that big giant denim thing. It's like, whoa, Bonnie.
yeah, very much. And the whole thing is just, well, it's the era of bright colors and big hair. So that's what it is. But it's still fun to see. It's a nice trip down memory lane, especially I would imagine for people that are more familiar with that talk show and have maybe watched it at the time. But I always enjoy getting an insight into the actor themselves. So I love watching those things just to sort of see what the person's like outside of their own role. It always was fun for me to watch interviews with Nicola Bryant, because she's talking in a British accent instead of that whatever she was trying to pull off as an American accent. So, but we won't even go there. But the last extra on the DVD is the photo gallery. I'm trying to remember here. I don't believe on this disc, and I apologize right now because I don't have the disc in front of me, but I don't think there's any DVD-ROM extras on this one. On some of these, there are PDF files of different things, and I don't believe there is on this one. I think it's just the photo gallery, which it's okay. It's never really my thing. I look at the photos, but a lot of them are still shots of what we've already seen in the episode. So,
It's publicity stuff. You're right. I'm just looking at the menu now, and there's no PDF stuff.
Okay.
But again, it's just nice to see some of the publicity shots. I mean, there's on the photo gallery, there's a couple of shots of Colin Bonney and Honor Blackman.
Yes.
Quite obviously posing, but it's for what it is. It's good. Like I say, and it's so much more than fans of other shows get.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the quantity and the quality of what we get on these discs and how we shouldn't take them for granted. But all right, well, I think that brings us to a close of this one. Next time, I will be reviewing The Ultimate Foe, and we'll also be giving you my score for the entire season as a whole. Going to be wrapping that up, and my guest co-host is got some pretty big shoes to fill because Tom has done an excellent job. So, Tom, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed this.
And my guest next time is Keith Baker. He's the gentleman who wrote the Who on Who theme song. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to Keith as well. That's 2 musicians in a row. I don't know if I can handle all that, but I'm going to do my best. But anyway, until next time, everyone, thank you very much for listening. You can reach me. You can friend request me on Facebook. There's only one David Huey out there, and that is me. You can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/David Huey. You can email me at david@whoonwho.com. If you don't participate in the forums over at Who on Who, please come over. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people aren't lately. I've been checking in on the forums, and I myself was a little lazy about it during the holiday seasons, and I apologize. But I have been on there, and we're not seeing a lot of traffic, so I would love to have people come on and talk. I know there are a lot of different Doctor Who forums out there, so you can't spend all day basically saying the same thing on every forum. But stop in, at least let us know that you're listening to the show. And Tom, where can people find you? I know they can Google Tom Attah. Tom Attah. And see, I knew I was going to pronounce that wrong at some point. Tom Attah. You can Google Tom. Tom, where else can they find you?
Literally, if you go to MySpace and just type Tom Attah, TOM-ATTAH, all one word, I'll pop out. But yeah, generally speaking, if you just type Tom space Attah into any search engine, I will arrive on your screens holding a guitar and crying in the blues.
That is a very nifty trick. I got to figure out how you did that because I'm afraid to Google my own name. God knows what's going to come up. So, but anyway, thank you again. It was a big blast having you on the show and getting a chance to talk to you. And we will see everybody next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Yarrow.
Hello there, this is Tony Gellisher on behalf of the Doctor Who Podcaster Alliance, an alliance of Who podcasts held together simply by people being terribly nice to each other, quite frankly. It does mean that we can offer you this. We have, in conjunction with SFX magazine, arranged 50 sets of free tickets to the SFX Weekender convention, which will be held on the 5th and 6th of February. It looks set to be one of the biggest science fiction conventions in Britain this year. Guests include Tom Baker, Elizabeth Sladen, Gareth David Lloyd, James Masters, Paul Cornell, Toby Hidoki, Dan Abnett, 2000 AD, and many. All you have to do to enter the draw for a set of tickets is call 08700 110034. That's 08700 110034 and quote the code DWPOD. That's DWPOD. Phone up, let them know that you're interested. You'll be entered in a draw. There's 50 sets of 4 tickets each set. Good luck, basically. The Doctor Who Podcaster Alliance, the alliance that likes a nice cup of... No, hang on. We pod so you don't have... No, guys, we really need to come up with a slogan.